Welcome to Mitzvah Expo, the Jewish Community Organization Showcase hosted by Rabbi Cantor Dr. Linda Bernstein.
Shalom and welcome to Mitzvah Expo, a new podcast and website showcasing the organizations and initiatives that enhance Jewish life, fight injustice, support Israel, strengthen our ties to the broader community, and more. I'm Rabbi Linda. Our goal is simple. We want you to get informed and be inspired by the work these valuable Jewish organizations do on our behalf every day. Alongside this podcast, our website at mitzvahexpo.org serves as a companion hub. There you'll find a showcase page for every organization featured on the program, with more information about their work and ways to connect with them. Today, our Mitzvah Expo featured organization is the Jewish Community Relations Council of the Bay Area, also known as the JCRC. I'm pleased to welcome Tye Gregory, CEO of the JCRC Bay Area and Executive Director of Bay Area Jewish Action, JCRC's new affiliated political advocacy organization. Tye is the California LGBTQ+ Jewish community leader. Under his leadership, the JCRC and BAJA advance a just world where Jewish identity is embraced and all people can thrive. JCRC Bay Area is the largest collective voice of Bay Area Jews. By building bridges and working in coalition with diverse ethnic, faith, political, and civic communities, they foster partnerships, provide meaningful educational and engagement opportunities, and build consensus for actionable solutions to real-world challenges. Among their many initiatives, JCRC's Education Initiative ensures fair and equitable treatment for Jewish and all students in K-12 schools by building relationships with district leadership to support inclusive classrooms. JCRC's Israel seminars bring Bay Area community leaders and elected officials to Israel and the West Bank to engage with and learn from diverse Israeli and Palestinian officials and changemakers. Tye, it's so great to have you with us today on Mitzvah Expo.
Thank you for having me.
We really appreciate your being here and being one of the first organizations to commit to coming on the program and being willing to be spotlighted by our showcase, and we're so excited to have you.
Pleasure's mine.
All right. So it's amazing that you are here today because in the sense that there have been so many things that have been happening. I heard in the news just yesterday that there were 5 incidents around the world of synagogue attacks. And there was an incident locally in San Jose. 2 Hebrew-speaking Israeli people were accosted by someone. It's a scary time. It's a time that I think that your organization is so needed. And so I want to begin, though, by people who aren't that familiar with the Jewish Community Relations Council, and also known as the JCRC, if that's okay if I use those initials. So tell us about what the JCRC is, both locally and also nationally, because I understand you're one of 12 JCRCs around the country.
12 independent JCRCs, and there's more than 100 that are part of federations. And so in every city, large and small, there's an organization doing the work that we're doing. And the principle is simple. We're 2% of the country, and we have to step up our safety and security measures and combat anti-Semitism. But the reality is we're not going to succeed if we do it alone. Isolationism is not a good strategy. And so we have to make sure that we have solid relationships with the elected and civic leaders around us and recognize that there are other communities struggling with issues that align with ours. And so we have to build coalitions, even if it might have gotten harder. We can talk about that. But we believe that it's our responsibility to sort of serve as the face of the Jewish community to the outside world and make sure that our needs are met and also support them. Because sometimes anti-Semitism is the problem, but sometimes it's a symptom of something else. And when it's a symptom of something else, we can find other communities to link arms with to solve a lot of those problems. And so that's really what the work that we do is here in the Bay Area. And as he referenced, it's a universal truth that we need to be doing this all across the country.
So in a sense, what you're doing is laying a foundation so you have the relationships built, and then when something happens, which it inevitably seems to be happening, especially now, that you have those relationships set up and you have a rapport and a communication and a dialogue with members of the community, other synagogues, JCCs, you touch upon all the different Jewish community elements as well as those out in the secular community.
Yes, and I think a different way to frame that, a good analogy, is we're the firefighters of the community. But the more fire prevention work we can do, the fewer fires we have to put out. And so the more we can do to educate and engage other communities and look at vulnerabilities and address those proactively, the less we're going to be drinking from a fire hose. Now, granted, there are things beyond our jurisdiction happening around the world that we can't fully prevent. And so we are drinking from a fire hose today, but that doesn't mean that the fire prevention isn't working in a part of the calculus.
Sometimes the fire risk is so great that one can't even keep it under control for a while. You hear
That's
about
right.
Fires being fought that it's so such percentage contained or whatever. So we're trying to keep it under control, contained, but it's not always easy to do that. And I totally hear what you're saying. So there's a whole kind of alphabet soup of Jewish organizations, and one of the things that I want to do on this program is to define what each of them are. And so I'm just curious, from your perspective, for example, how do you differ from, let's say, the Anti-Defamation League or other Jewish organizations that may have the battling of anti-Semitism as could be a main focus or part of their focus? You have it as part of your focus because it seems like you do a number of different things, for everything from trying to lobby legislatures to educate children, so there's a whole gamut of different things that you do. So how do you make us understand better how JCRC is different from everyone else?
I would say two things. Number one, we are an organization by and for the Bay Area Jewish community, and that's true of JCRCs across the country. And so oftentimes a national organization, which by the way is essential, ADL is one of our closest partners, a national organization calibrates its strategy at the federal level, but there are distinctions politically, racially, culturally, all across the country. And so you need organizations like ours to be addressing the microclimates that exist in our backyards. So our entire leadership, our entire programs, and our entire strategy is calibrated to the communities that we live in. And I think that that's really important. And we look at issues longitudinally. Yes, we play whack-a-mole. Yes, we put out fires. But this is about building relationships over decades, taking leaders to Israel when they're a startup city council member or supervisor on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, not knowing that they're going to be the governor of California someday. And so we play the long game with our work. And so we're in the relationship building business. And sometimes that is less sexy than some of the headlines, but that's really the bread and butter of this organization and what makes our response effective when the time comes. We have those relationships, we built the trust, and we can respond effectively. So we need national organizations. Their thought leadership, their strategy, and their public platforms are essential. And you need the local organizations on the ground. They're going to be there the next day after a crisis.
You mentioned decades in terms of relationship building, and the JCRC, I was reading about your history, that it's actually started in the 30s when there were immigrants coming from escaping Germany. My parents were one of those. And so, and then looking at every decade, how you focused on different hot political issues, not just Jewish issues per se, but issues that are maybe involve Jewish values, but just what has been your kind of the focus over the decades, and how do you choose which issue to focus on, and how does that kind of come together?
So I would say we have to make sure that we have relationships across different communities and across different elected offices, because we don't know where the next crisis is going to come from. So that we need to make sure that we're well prepared. So a great example is the fight for LGBTQ rights and same-sex marriage. JCRC was a key organization since going back more than 20 years ago, engaging in this fight. And it's thanks to the relationships that we built in the Castro in San Francisco and with openly gay elected officials in San Francisco that we were well positioned to be a community partner in advocating for same-sex marriage and equal protections. And so we didn't know when that issue was going to spike, and it became transformative in this country overnight. And I'm part of that community. I'm proud that JCRC took a leading role of that as well. Another example is after 9/11, when the Muslim community was being heavily scapegoated. We have relationships with the Muslim community. We can dig into that in the post 10/7 world, different conversation. But our Muslim neighbors were afraid after 9/11 that they were being scapegoated in the Bay Area. And we were a leading faith-based organization that helped make sure that they felt secure, and we stood by them. So those are just two more recent examples. You can go to the refuseniks and the fight for Soviet Jewry, and the Bay Area is one of the main places that they immigrated to, and we took a major role advocating our elected leaders to make sure that could happen. So we sort of make sure that we have the relationships across the board so that where the issue arises, we can be the effective voice in the community to respond.
So basically in every decade, there's been some kind of more than one issue. There's been multiple issues. And the JCRC, interestingly, has partnered with other organizations and other ethnic groups and to battle those kinds of human rights issues that are coming up all the time. And so
that's right.
So you have, though it's the Jewish Community Relations Council, it's really the community part is kind of important to emphasize.
Absolutely. And I think that there's something really unique about what's happened over the past few years where we've been hyper-focused on combating anti-Semitism with very good reason. But it's because of that legacy over the decades that those community members and leaders understand that now we're in a moment of acute crisis. And so thank goodness we were there, demonstrating that we share values with these communities. Yes, we've lost allies, but by and large, the organizations and leaders that we have a history of partnering with have stood by our community. And so I know folks are skeptical in this moment about where our allies have been, but I can say that trust relationship building still works. It might be harder, but it's still a proven effective model.
What do you feel are your current key issues and initiatives that you are focusing on right now?
So number one is ensuring Bay Area Jewish students can thrive in our public and private schools. There's been a lot of curriculum issues, no surprise to any of your listeners. And so we're making sure that at the state level that there are standards about what can be taught, about how Jewish students can be treated. We passed AB 715 that Gavin Newsom signed into law last year, and that's a landmark anti-Semitism in education bill that's going to create an anti-Semitism coordinator for the state so that anytime there's an incident, we have a person in the state government to partner with in addressing the issue. And so we've had partners in the state government before, but it's been decentralized. No one's had that specific portfolio. And so we think this is a way that we can be much more effective in partnering with our government to address these issues if the districts fail to address them themselves. And that's an important component of this also. We want to be able to resolve these issues at the lowest level of heat. 9 times out of 10, it's a misunderstanding, or the teacher, principal, superintendent doesn't know how to respond. So it's important that we start with an open hand, educate them, give them recommendations, and give them the space to right the wrong that happened. And then there's that 1 time out of 10 where there is malicious intent, and we do have to escalate it. And that's when it's really important to have the state as a partner. So that's, I think, by volume, the number one source of anti-Semitism incidents that we've been responding to.
Besides anti-Semitism, what are some of the other issues right now that you're focusing on?
So another example, getting back to our role over the years, we took a very prominent role during the wave of anti-Asian violence in San Francisco in light of COVID. Asian seniors were getting pushed down. There was another unfortunate incident that happened just last week to an Asian senior in Chinatown. And so this is still ongoing. But we took out a full-page ad in the Chinese newspaper for Chinatown in 2020 saying, "The Jewish community knows how this feels. We stand with you against this type of scapegoating." And sure enough, what happened after October 7th? The same scapegoating for events overseas is now happening to the Jewish community. And so the Asian community, because we've engaged with them, we have an Asian Jewish roundtable in San Francisco and across the Bay Area. Those allies in the Chinese and Japanese communities specifically are standing up for the Jewish community because they understand that there's a parallel form of hate happening to us, just as has happened to them in recent years. So we're very proud of our work engaging with and building partners in the Asian community right now, which, by the way, in San Francisco is 1 out of 3 residents. So it's the largest demographic group and a really important partner. We don't have a lot of voters compared to them, but what we do well is organize our institutions. So we're very strong partners in that way. And again, at a time where people are feeling isolated, finding opportunities like that to link arms has been really important for the community and for our impact.
I heard a member of the Michigan synagogue yesterday that was attacked say that this attack was not just on the Jews. It's really an attack on everyone who wants to observe a religion or do any kind of activity and be free to do it. And so I think that's critical in what your mission is that you think of the community as partners, as brothers, and work together. And I think that's really important. Is there any misconception about JCRC that you'd want to kind of rectify?
Oh, there are tons. But I would say that what makes us unique is that we do our work by consensus. We need to make sure that when we're walking into Nancy Pelosi's office or Mayor Daniel Lurie's office, or, pick your favorite elected official or least favorite one in the Bay Area, that we need to make sure that they know that when we meet with them that we're representing the Jewish community. And to say that you represent the Jewish community with how many different opinions out there is a very difficult thing to do. And so we try to convene rabbis, organizations, community leaders, etc., to figure out where we do have alignment before we speak out on issues. And when there is an alignment, we convey that to elected officials also, because it's really inefficient for us to be at war with ourselves when we're meeting with an elected official. So we all agree on things like Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish and democratic state, but we may have differences of opinion on what's happening in this war right now. And whether the goals are clearly outlined or justified. We don't need to get into all the details there, but we make sure that we convey to our elected leaders where there's alignment and where there might be differences of opinion in our community today.
Speaking of differences of opinion, I was noticing in your website you have one section that talks about civil discourse and how you've put a lot of effort into, even among Jewish populations, Jewish people within even a synagogue, you had like a pilot program where you helped to have workshops that taught people how to communicate with each other. What do you think is kind of a key issue right now? Well, not an issue, but like an approach right now that might be useful when there's so many differences of opinion about the war, about Israel, about what they're doing, and so trying to kind of move forward and be productive in our discussions rather than going at each other.
Well, I think that, again, this idea of consensus building is really key, because if you zoom out to the forest instead of the trees and talk about shared values, and that we're just applying those values in different ways, I think that we can find more unity, or at least lower the temperature. It's no surprise to parents that there might be generational divides around these issues. And when the kids who are more critical of Israel talk about the fact that they learned those Jewish values from their parents being more avid Zionists than them, for example, it's harder to be argumentative when we are rooting the work in the same values. And so I think that exploring shared values and motivations behind our positions is a great starting point, because it actually helps folks realize that, okay, I might disagree with what you think should happen because of these values, but I can't disagree with the fact that you're coming from a good place. And so that helps us see one another and lower the temperature at a time when our community does seem more and more divided, especially in the left-leaning Bay Area.
Do you have hope for the future for going forward in some sort of a way that's going to, rather than continue to divide, but unify both the Jewish population ourselves, but also how we're going to get along with other people in the world going forward? Because it seems like, because Israel has such a strong desire to live in peace, they're willing to do just about anything to get there. And a lot of people don't quite understand that sentiment. Now, my daughter lives in Israel, and I talk with her about it. She has a very different opinion than somebody who's here in the U.S. about what are we doing, So what's your kind of hope going forward?
Well, I think that this is a challenging time, and my guess is we're more likely to be divided further before it fixes itself. And what I would say is things that used to seem common today are radical, but I think are the paths off this trajectory. Meaning we need to get in rooms together. We need to get coffees together. We need to get offline together because our cell phones and our social media platforms are incentivizing division. They profit off of division. That's the model. And that's not serving the Jewish community well with itself. It's not serving our relationships with other communities very well. And by the way, we're having this conversation, but every other community has these same challenges in some form or another. There are divides in the Black community, the LGBTQ community. You go down the list, there are fractures and divisions in these communities, much like our own, around different issues. But we are not the only community experiencing this, and sometimes we agonize because we feel like, oh, there must be something wrong inherently with our community that this is happening. But the reality is societies, technology, and news sources and things like that are instigating these types of fissures across different communities as well. And so this is not something we should only look through a Jewish lens at. So this is what we've been doing all along. And if you go back into Jewish history, it's what's worked to secure Jewish safety and freedom, which is we have to have relationships with the powers that be, like the story of Purim, where Esther was able to use her relationships to make sure the Jews of Persia were free, right? Without those relationships, the story would have ended much differently. So there's ancient wisdom in our Jewish tradition around this approach, and the reality is we have to get offline and start building personable relationships with the decision makers and communities around us.
One of the key tools that I'm sure you use, and I know you use, is education. And so can you give us just a brief overview of how you approach education from children on up to adults and also within families, but also in terms of educating legislature, people, in the legislature, different, whether it's local, state, federal organizations. What is your approach to education, and how can you make it so that it's most effective?
So at the center of our work is an understanding that Jewish identity is what we need to put forward. We can't just be against what's happening to us, anti-Semitism. We have to be for our community. And at the root of that is ensuring a strong understanding of the diversity and complexity of Jewish identity. People turn us into this black and white image, and that's really unhelpful because anti-Semitism manifests in different ways and against different kinds of Jews in different ways. It manifests against an Orthodox Jew who is most visible on the subway in New York. They are vulnerable to physical violence of anti-Semitism. Whereas a Jew of color who doesn't look Ashkenormative, for example, might never be assumed to be Jewish and are more likely to be in conversations where someone's making anti-Semitic remarks, thinking that it's a safe environment to do so. And so if we're educating our neighbors and our students about what Jewish identity is, that you can be an atheist or an Orthodox Jew, you can be an Ashkenazi Jew or a multiracial Jew of color, making sure that people understand the diversity and complexity of who we are and how our identities manifest. If we can strengthen understanding of that, people will hear many more of the dog whistles that right now are going unanswered. And that includes our historical and modern connection to the Jewish state and to the Jewish homeland. If they understand how we relate to it, or don't sometimes, it'll be much easier for folks to pick up on our number one frustration, which is, oh, that's not anti-Semitic, I'm just criticizing Israel. Okay, but how are you weaponizing that criticism in ways that hurts Jews or inspires violence like what we saw in Santana Row in San Jose? So we have to start by educating about Jewish identity and being positive about it and celebrating our identity, but that will also result in more of those dog whistles going heard.
I guess like any large group of people, the identity varies quite a bit, from person to person. There's so many different kinds of levels of religious tradition, whether it's Reform, conservative, and renewal, whatever. So I think it's pretty difficult to have a consistent message across all those groups. But I think what you're trying to say is we're all Jews, those of us who are, and we should try to focus on kind of what our ideals would be and based on Jewish values. So that's really important. Do you feel like, okay, let me ask you this, the future of JCRC, how do you see it? How it's going to evolve? You are a young person and you're hopefully going to be kind of the future of this organization going forward. And so I'd like to know what your kind of challenges are that you feel that you're going to be facing. How are you going to overcome them? Will JCRC need to evolve constantly to just maintain the foundation that it started with and be receptive to the shifting landscape that we live in right now?
Oh, absolutely. I think, and your lips to God's ears, that I'm sticking around. I certainly hope so. But I think what we need to recognize is there's two sides of being a legacy organization. We talked about the upside, which is that we have decades of experience and relationships and victories that help propel our work forward. And the flip side is sometimes we ignore the ways in which the evolving needs of the community or the evolving ways that our society works threaten or question the structures that we've built. And I think that this isn't just true of JCRC, it's true of every legacy organization. How are we making sure that we're responsive to Jews today? Because sometimes these, what are perceived to be overly bureaucratic processes, are feeling increasingly irrelevant to younger Jews. JCRC Council is the second C, Jewish Community Relations Council. People don't necessarily understand what this is. It's 75 member organizations, but most Jews in the Bay Area are actually unaffiliated, are not part of a Jewish organization, right? So how are we representing them? How are we making sure that our work speaks to the quote-unquote Jew on the street that cares about their identity, cares about rising anti-Semitism, but might not affiliate with a synagogue or work out at a JCC, right? So I'm thinking about them. How do we better support them? They should not have to be, a member of a synagogue for us to be responsive to their needs. We're responsive to the entire Jewish community. And so I think that is a big question that we're wrestling with today.
What do you feel that unaffiliated groups' needs are that you're trying to do they, I guess, just feeling a sense of belonging would be one thing, even though they're not associated with a particular institution?
Well, number one, I think, is having pride in their identities. This manifests in a couple primary ways. We hear a lot of first-time callers, let's say, that are young parents, where they have kids going into the elementary schools. They've read the headlines or there's been incidents in the past at that school. And they reach out to JCRC for the first time because suddenly there's a reason that they need to engage with the Jewish organization. So sometimes that's a point of entry for them to Jewish life. And we want to make sure that what they see and experience resonates with who they are and not feeling like something that's out of touch or inaccessible. Another example is Jews at work. Even in these large tech companies, a lot of Jews are feeling maligned by policies or, using Slack, the intra-communication channels that they have in their company. A lot of them have gone off the rails with channels about the Middle East that are unregulated, where they feel like they're sidelined because they're Zionists or care about the Jewish state. And they suddenly feel the need to find Jewish support. And so that's another place where we've been trying to help organizations and companies with those issues that, quite frankly, a few years ago, we never even thought about. And so there are entry points into our organization from Jews at work or parents entering schools that are brand new. And we need to make sure that they feel comfortable and confident and proud that we or other Jewish organizations can be a good fit for the lives that they want to live.
A big part of Mitzvah Expo, and I'm going to close with this question, is how can people who are listening, our Mitzvah Expo community, get more involved to either find out more. We talk about learning as well as getting inspired. And so perhaps they want to get involved with your organization, either financially providing support or in some other way. What are some ways that people can get involved?
Well, the easiest thing to do is start at jcrc.org. where we have webinars and resources for parents and teachers and community members, people that want to advocate for an issue. We have resources online, webinars to train you. Sometimes people don't feel like they know where to start. So please consider us a resource and a partner. And what I would say, the call to action is, I have 22 staff. It's a big 10 counties that we serve. We as staff and professionals cannot do this work alone. We are in a different time. And so we need every layperson to recognize that they do have influence in their own spheres in their lives. That's joining a PTA. That's talking to HR in your corporation. That's making sure that your medical system, for example, has assurances around doctor-patient care. You don't necessarily think that you have the ability to have an impact on these issues, but really you do. And the only way we're going to meet these challenges is if all of your listeners figure out who is influential in their lives to have a conversation with about what's happening to them today. And the last thing I'll say is, people often say, okay, well, give me a set of talking points to go do this. And those exist. Those are, we can give you talking points. There's a lot on our website. But the reality is that's a lot less important than you telling your story. You talked about having parents that left Germany. My grandmother left Germany during World War II. Talking about her life story and how that inspired me to be a Jewish leader is a lot more impactful than me reading a list of talking points when I talk about my motivations for doing this work. Storytelling resonates a lot more than facts and figures that could be, shot out by ChatGPT, right? It's a lot harder to turn down someone's story than it is a set of facts turned into an argument. So use your own stories and your own motivations as a way to influence. You already have the capability. No one needs to train you how to tell your story. And that's really where we need to get started.
That's a very strong message. And it sounds like in a sense, you're saying that all of us need to be firefighters in our own worlds, and doing that with our personal stories and our histories and our motivations can make it even more powerful. So
that's exactly right.
Well, thank you so much, Tyler, for joining us today on Mitzvah Expo. And we encourage all of you to check out mitzvahexpo.org, where you will find the showcase page for the JCRC and be able to find out more information and how to get involved with this incredible group of people who are working so hard for all of us every day to improve the quality of Jewish life, and not just for us, but for the community as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Tyler. My special thanks to Tye Gregory for joining us today and sharing the important work of Jewish Community Relations Council Bay Area with our Mitzvah Expo listeners. To learn more about JCRC Bay Area initiatives and about the other organizations featured on the program, visit our showcase pages on mitzvahexpo.org. While you're there, we invite you to join the Mitzvah Expo community so you can stay up to date on future programs, featured organizations, and events. We invite you to also share a mitzvah you've done in your own life or community. Your good deed may inspire others and help highlight the many ways people can make a difference. You can listen to Mitzvah Expo on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and listen or watch on YouTube. And of course at mitzvahexpo.org. If you enjoyed the program, please follow or subscribe so more people can discover the inspiring work happening across the Jewish community. And we'd love to hear from you. Please write to me at rabbilindabernstein@gmail.com with your comments and suggestions for future featured Jewish organizations. Get informed, be inspired. For Mitzvah Expo, I'm Rabbi Linda Bernstein.
You've been listening to Mitzvah Expo. Learn more at mitzvahexpo.org.
Mitzvah Expo is a production of Vita Media Corporation.